If you're excited for the Darren Till vs Robert Whittaker fight, then be sure to show this by smashing the like button.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Mario Yamasaki has called a stop to this contest at 3 minutes, 28 seconds of round number 2. Declaring the winner by TKO, Robert the Reaper Whittaker.
Welcome back everybody to Keenan K TV. In today's video, let's talk about the Robert Whittaker vs Darren Till fight. But in this episode, mainly focus on why Robert the Reaper Whittaker could defeat Darren the Gorilla Till. I will also make another video where I talk about why Darren Till could defeat Robert Whittaker. To stay notified for that, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel with the bell turned on. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into why the Reaper Robert Whittaker could defeat Darren the Gorilla Till. To begin with, this fight in particular is a very interesting fight now that it is taking place at the time that it does. What I mean by that is this. Right now, both Darren Till and Robert Whittaker are somewhat freshly off pretty devastating defeats, and from those defeats, they will surely get better, learn, and correct their mistakes. Now, we've already seen that from Darren Till's side when he fought Kelvin Gastelum. Usually, when Darren Till fights, he's pretty much quick to impose his physicality upon his opponent. But that was at the welterweight division, and at the welterweight division, he had no problems walking down anybody, even the champion Tyron Woodley. So in that scenario, he was always able to use his physical advantages to the best of his abilities. But as soon as he moves up to the middleweight division, all of a sudden he's fighting bigger men, and these fighters, they're not going to be that quick to be weight bullied around, especially when you're fighting somebody who is about the same size as you and Robert Whittaker. Now surely, come fight night, Darren Till will be heavier, but in terms of height and reach, they're virtually identical. Same height and only an inch in reach to Darren Till's advantage. That's it. All the rest pretty much the same. So when he moved up to fight somebody who was smaller than him in Kelvin Gastelum, it was pretty odd to me to see how much he was afraid to go out and kind of impose his will on somebody like Kelvin Gastelum. Now, there are two things that I can take away from that. First is this: Kelvin Gastelum is a very slick counterpuncher, so for him to go in there and recklessly throw, let's just say, fairly telegraphed shots when it comes from Darren Till's side on the front foot, it is pretty obvious that Kelvin Gastelum will have a fairly good understanding of when Darren Till comes in and how he could be countering, because Darren Till, he respected Kelvin Gastelum's knockout ability, and you should. He has knocked out pretty much everybody that he fought up until he fought Israel Adesanya. He was able to drop everybody, including Adesanya if I'm not mistaken, at the middleweight division that is. So Till was a bit hesitant. And then we saw the other side of Darren Till, which rarely comes out, and that was the point fighting style of Darren Till. Now that style only really came out when he fought somebody like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. That was it. He went 5 rounds and he didn't really have any significant shots landing on Stephen Wonderboy Thompson aside the big left hand that he connected with in the final round. Aside from that, that was it. The most work he got done was by kicking the legs. And then when you take a look at somebody like Robert Whittaker, he is pretty much all about point fighting. Robert, in contrast to Till, he is always shooting his jabs, cheap kicking, walking in with a jab straight and ending it off with a high kick. That is pretty much what Robert Whittaker is all about. So it is never coming down to the fact that Robert Whittaker doesn't know which shot to select, because he's very good with everything that he wants to throw. When he throws, he kind of always comes forward, right? It is always a forward momentum. I call that somebody who just walks in with the shots. He kind of steps in with each shot. That is what Robert Whittaker is all about. For example, Darren Till, I would call him somebody who just snaps his shots. He maintains ground, he snaps his shots, and then he proceeds to cover the ground that needs to be covered in order for him to pressure the opponent. That is what he's all about. So when Darren Till is fighting somebody who's going to be always coming in, jumping in, lunging in, covering ground, I would have to believe that the pressuring Darren Till that has the most success against his opponents will not be there. And when that is the case, and when you already have somebody who is bigger than what Darren Till is used to fighting, you are ending up with a very, very difficult opponent to beat when you are Darren Till. Now with the stage set and a tempo laid out, which will be a kind of a chess match type of fight where Robert Whittaker will be moving around, but so will be Darren Till. Okay, so now we have that. Let's now focus on the tools Robert Whittaker can use to beat Darren Till. For me, instantly, the best weapon that Robert Whittaker has is exactly the weapon that got him knocked out in fighting Israel Adesanya. It's that lunging, jumping in, lead left hook. Sure, against Adesanya, who is very defensively sound and very skilled, that worked against him. And besides, Israel Adesanya is 6'4" with an 80-inch reach, a serious range to cover. With Darren Till, there is no such range. Coming back to Robert Whittaker's lead jumping and left hook, I believe against a southpaw like Darren Till, who mainly uses his lead left hand to kind of push back the opponent, get the reach and get the range down, I believe by coming over the shoulder, jumping in with full force is exactly the weapon that will work against him. Because Darren Till kind of has the same stance as Conor McGregor in the sense of it is a pretty open guard. Robert Whittaker, on the other hand, it is a very closed up guard. He bends over, he leans over, he fights a lot shorter than he actually is, and by doing that, he has a great guard. It's kind of like a turtle shell guard, and he's able to mask everything that he's doing fairly well. Whenever he comes in, you never really know if it's a lead left hook, if it's a lead left high kick, if it's a teep, or if it's a right hand. That is exactly the perfect method for him to come in and catch Darren Till by surprise, because defensively speaking, Darren Till has really only relied on his legs. In terms of upper body head movement, that is not really there. Whereas Israel Adesanya, he had that to his, Israel Adesanya probably has the best head movement in the middleweight division, period. So when Darren Till does not have any of that, he is left with just moving back. And like I said, with Robert Whittaker's ability to chain up these strikes, let's just say he comes in with a jab, chains it up with a lead overhand left hook, comes over the jab hand over the right shoulder of Darren Till, catches him beautifully on the chin, and then follows it up with a right hand and a high kick. It's just covering range to the maximum. Darren Till's defense plays just perfectly into Robert Whittaker's offensive combinations. And that is a big problem for Darren Till. I look forward to see how he can deal with it. In my opinion, Darren Till's best defense has always been his offense, but when you take a look at Robert Whittaker, he is a lot more defensively responsible. For example, when he fought Yoel Romero, he knew that coming in with one big blow at a time will just work against him, because Yoel Romero is a very strong counterpuncher. He is very twitch muscle fiber heavy, he's very explosive, very quick, so he knew that he couldn't come in with one shot at a time because he will get countered just the same way Israel Adesanya got countered in the very first round. So what did he do? He stuck to his jabs, he stuck to his teep kicks, and he didn't overcommit to his shots. Now take a look at Tyron Woodley versus Darren Till. What happened in that fight? Pretty much Tyron Woodley is a welterweight version of Yoel Romero to a certain extent. He's also very counterpunch heavy. He's also waiting for that one big opening to counter in. He just is pretty much a pretty good comparison, right? And then you have Darren Till, who comes in with a very telegraphed, pre-feinted entry that Tyron Woodley saw coming. He slipped a jab, banged the right hand, and dropped him. That is not really defensively responsible from Darren Till's side. And against, for example, Jorge Masvidal, there was no real initiation of feinting, feeling out, going to the body to a certain extent and waiting it out. There was none of that. He was just coming in there and taking his head off clean. That was Darren Till's mindset back then, right? And that was exactly what got him into trouble. Against Jorge Masvidal, he was missing a lot of his shots because Masvidal has tremendous head movement. But aside from that, on his own defensive part, he was not really doing himself a lot of favors. He was being very stubborn with the ground that he was keeping because he didn't want to give up any footing. He didn't want to give up any ground. He stayed firmly on his feet, and the most that he wanted to move back was maybe a step, and the rest came back from the upper body leaning back. He would lean back, use his advantage in size and reach to just pow out the distance and keep the opponent away from him and make them miss the shots. But after doing that repeatedly, Jorge Masvidal got the timing down and knocked him out cold. That's what happened. But against somebody who is about the same size as Darren Till, he doesn't have that luxury. So what will happen? He has to solely depend on footwork. And because of that, I believe it will be a fight that will favor Robert Whittaker's fighting style. But coming back to what I said about Darren Till fighting Woodley and Jorge, he made a lot of mistakes in that fight. And when he fought Kelvin Gastelum, you saw how hesitant he was, how tentative he was. He was virtually, admittedly, like he said, he was scared going into that fight. He wasn't really confident. But as soon as he got his fear of fighting out of the way, we saw Darren Till connecting with a lot of left straights, pop shotting Kelvin Gastelum and just moving him out of the way as soon as he touched him. He would pop shot and then he would get out of the way. Now Kelvin Gastelum is a fellow southpaw fighter, so he's not accustomed to countering a fellow southpaw fighter. So essentially his entire counter game got messed up when he fought Darren Till, plus the size advantage that Darren Till had, plus the strength advantage, plus the skill. It was very hard for Kelvin Gastelum to get in anything that was significant. But with Robert Whittaker, it is a different story. Robert Whittaker himself can pressure Darren Till. He can put the pressure on Darren Till himself. He is a very strong fighter. He's not afraid of Darren Till. He won't just look for counter punches. He will actively, when he has a chance, pressure Darren Till himself and look to finish him. This is the type of fighter Robert Whittaker is. And that is why exactly this fight is very, very entertaining and very special in my eyes. Because right now, Robert Whittaker himself just came off a very big crushing defeat, mainly at the hands of a weapon he used to trust a lot, which was the lunging and left hook, right? He probably has trained on using a lot more traditional methods of closing in the range, and against Darren Till, I believe that will help. So with that being said, this is exactly why Robert the Reaper Whittaker can defeat Darren the Gorilla Till. How will it happen? I believe that a TKO finish is not far-fetched, but I believe given the fact that these two will compete in somewhat of a chess match, it will most likely come down to a unanimous decision victory. Who do you guys think that will be? Leave it in the comment section down below, and as always, in the end, only time will tell. For now, I have been Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.